Let me ask you a question. What do you want for yourself in the next 3 years? How much of your energy are you putting into making that happen? He really changed my life with that one conversation.
What were you saying to yourself at that time in your mind?
Definitely made me very depressed and suicidal because you have no control over your situation.
Building resilience young in her life as she overcame domestic abuse. The world of sports, her place of joy. The spark to her competitive fuse.
You are your own best advocate. You have to protect yourself. There are bad people in the world.
What do you ask on a first date?
I ask what people want. The best piece of advice that I've ever gotten was,
Greetings, I'm Ashley Samuels Mackenzie,
And I'm Charles Parkinson,
and welcome to How I Became.
where we unveil the unscripted journeys of inspirational figures.
If you enjoy the show, could you do one thing? Subscribe. Wherever you are, just click the subscribe or follow button. That simple act can help us grow the podcast in a big way, and we need your support to do it. And if you really want to help play a part in our growth, rate us on Spotify or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world. Thank you. This episode is brought to you by Uber, shaping the future for consumers as they go anywhere and get anything. Advertising on Uber connects brands with hundreds of millions of people using Uber around the world in the moments that move them most. To learn more about what we can do for your brand, visit uber.com/advertising. Building resilience young in her life as she overcame domestic abuse. The world of sports, her place of joy, the spark to her competitive fuse. She knew what she wanted to be, so she found the right spaces to intern. It was first in the arena of radio, where she honed the craft that she would learn. Blending two of the key loves in her life, she became the host of a number of sports shows. We're all special at the thing we're meant to be, and that's a fact that she has shown. So we have about 30 minutes, so let's kick it off in a How I Became flavour. Introducing co-host of Speak on Fox Sports 1 and Two Personal Show, Joy Taylor.
wow, that was very good.
Okay.
That was very unexpected. That's very cool.
That is your life in a poem.
That was very good, yes.
This is the story of how you became a TV superstar, host of, as Ashley said, Speak on Fox Sports 1, which if you're not in the US and you're in the UK, maybe it's like Sky Sports 1, something like that.
Yes.
So big show, big audience, talking about all sports, right? And as Ashley said, co-host of the Two Personal podcast, an amazing podcast.
Thank you.
And that's with Taylor Rooks,
Yes.
who we saw last night at the Spotify party.
Yes.
We're in Cannes at Spotify, by the way, everybody who's listening.
BT Dubs.
And founder of the Joy Taylor Foundation. So, actually, before we do, we've got some quick fire questions we're going to ask you.
3 podcasts you'd recommend others to listen to.
Higher Learning with Van Lathan and Rachel Lindsay. Ryan Russillo of his podcast I was just on recently. He does a great sports podcast. And, I would say Too Personal is a great show.
I've heard of it. It's amazing.
I heard that one.
That's your one.
Scotty and Sylvia are two good friends of mine that have a great podcast as well. So you can check their podcast out.
Awesome. Favorite book you'd recommend people to read?
So I'm finishing up Sapiens, but Sapiens is a very big undertaking.
It's chunky.
It's chunky, yeah.
It's a lot. It's chunky and you got to pay attention. So I would say if you're in for a big read, Sapiens is amazing. But I think Alchemist is a book that everyone should read.
Yes.
I think it's a very special book. It's one of the most read books ever. But I give that book to people sometimes when I feel the energy is important for them to read it. It's not a heavy lift. And if you really get into the story, I think it's something you can tap into a lot.
It's inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Music artists that you think people should listen to that they may not already be listening to.
Simba. So check out Simba. He is a rapper in the States. He is coming up quickly. You will see more and more of him. He's extremely talented, a great storyteller, very refreshing and unapologetic as well. And just a fabulous lyricist and a friend. So
Nice.
Simba.
Nice.
SIMBA?
SYMBA.
YMBA.
And who's better, Michael Jordan or Steph Curry?
I am a Jordan zealot, so I grew up watching and loving Michael Jordan. He is one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about sports. I used to, on a VHS, I'm aging myself right now, but record his games. And even though I knew how they ended, would rewatch them.
Really? But
So
did you want to play or you just liked to?
I did. I played basketball, believe it or not, for many years.
Oh, cool.
From probably fifth grade all through high school. Those years are behind me, but I've always loved basketball. I will say this about Steph Curry, though. Steph Curry has had a monumental influence on the game of basketball. His shooting ability, his range has inspired an entire new generation of athletes, and I think it's influenced the women's game as well. So he is a massively powerful influence on sports, just his game and the way he's played, and his career just being as successful as the Warriors have been, led by him. So I think Michael Jordan is better, but I do want to give Steph Curry his flowers because he's really changed the game.
There's a reason I asked you that question. There's this great clip online of you being like, we are not having that conversation. We're not having it.
Yeah.
There's no conversation here.
It's really not.
Michael Jordan.
It's really not. But I think we do this a lot in sports talk, in sports opinion, is we have the hypotheticals or who's better or rank them or who's the GOAT, and they're fun, and that's just how we talk about sports. Like, you have your favorite players, I have my favorite players, we have players that we both think are great, but one might be better, whatever. And it's great for conversation, but I do think sometimes we get a little too crazy with wanting to promote the next person. We get a little tired of greatness, just in general, whatever it is. We want the next new thing. And sometimes I think we just need to leave some things alone, until it's time to have those conversations.
Yeah. I wanted the response you did on the clip, basically. I wanted you to
You
go,
guys have
I'm
this-
done,
we
I'm
started
out
with
of
a
here.
Poem. Like, it's we're on the beach in Cannes. Like, it's, you got to get me riled up.
Yeah, but I think that's what comes across as what you're great at. You say what you feel, say what you think with passion, and it's great to watch.
Thank you.
Okay, now into your story.
Moving to the start of your story. So what was different about your childhood that changed your perspective on life?
So I grew up in a very abusive home. It was very loud, very disruptive, very chaotic. And, at the time, it was not a thing to talk about what was going on in your home. It wasn't like a thing to talk about your mental health or how you're feeling. And so it was a very tough time. I would say I have, brothers and sisters, and I'm very close with my mother. So I did feel some sense of family in them because we were all going through the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was challenging. And it's also one of those things where people, because you're not talking about what's going on, people perceive things to be normal and safe and a productive, childhood and family. So that was something that really shaped me, shaped my work ethic as well, because it was a priority for me to be able to control my finances and be able to live independently of anyone else, because I saw the terror that, not having those options can really inflict on not just a person who's in a relationship, but, an entire family. So that was a interesting time.
Any memories that really stand out for you of that time to paint a picture of what you were going through?
Yeah, my first memory. This is funny. My friend is outside. My first memory in life, like my core memory, which
First ever memory
that I have, is we had this little room off of the kitchen that had the washer and dryer in it. And it was me and my younger sister and younger brother. They're a year younger than me each. So sister's a year younger. My brother is a year younger than her. And we were huddled in the room, and there was no door, so you could see right into the kitchen. And my father's chasing my mother around the kitchen table, and they're both crying, and I may be I don't know whenever you could have an earliest memory, 4 or
3,
5.
4,
Yeah.
5, yeah.
I'm very small and they are infants. And she's just saying, don't hit me in front of the kids. And that chaotic, when you travel back to a memory that is that core, you can feel and hear and see everything the same way. And I mean, I guess it's very sad that that's my first memory in life, but it's also something that has been foundational for me for everything that I do, good or bad. And when you have something that goes on like that, that's out of your control as a child, I feel an obligation as an adult to do the work to heal that. And it's a lifelong journey, but I'm very much an advocate of therapy and, finding your own way to balance your mental health and work through things like that.
During that time, did you want to leave and like get out and go somewhere different?
For sure. I mean, that's why I'm saying it made me very motivated to be successful and to make money even at a very young age, because in my mind, I was like, okay, when I hit 18, I'm leaving. Like, I'm not going down the street. I'm getting as far away from this as possible. So yeah, I mean, obviously you want to escape a situation like that, but I'm a child and I don't want to leave my mother, and where would I go? And, he's a powerful person to me as a a teenager or whatever it may be. So the thoughts are there, and it definitely made me very depressed and suicidal because you have no control over your situation. And the more that you are in a repetitive abuse cycle, the less of you there is. Because in order for someone to abuse someone, you have to control them. And to control them, you have to strip them of their power and their identity and their self-worth. Because if someone walked up to you and, did something to you that you didn't know, you would be outraged. You would call the police. You would be, you would have an appropriate reaction. But when this happens in a interpersonal relationship, the reaction is different because when you start it is very jarring, but then they ask for forgiveness, and then, okay, maybe you just had a moment, and then the next time you do it, and then that starts the cycle because you've already compromised on something that you should never compromise on.
Yeah.
So that cycle can really wear down your entire identity and your ability to process why this is happening to you. And as a child, that's even more terrorizing because you don't have the power to go anywhere. You don't have the power to leave. So it definitely put me in a suicidal state for a long time. But again, we didn't have mental health conversations at that point in time. So it was just something that I just had to make a choice to push through. And, it's always a process when you get to that space to build yourself back up. And I wouldn't say that it happens for a very long time, again, because we didn't have access to mental health, to conversations like that. So I don't even remember the first time that I even talked about it. Was well into my adulthood.
What were you saying to yourself at that time in your mind? What were the thoughts?
Just that I just didn't want to be here anymore. It just felt easier to not be here. When you don't know what the next day holds from maybe it's a good day or maybe it's a bad day. Maybe you do something on a good day that they're mad about on the bad day. So there's no way to get ahead of it. There's no way to make the situation better because there's always a next thing that they're going to do to you. So it definitely felt easier, but I think wanting to be there for my mother was important to me for sure. Not wanting to put her in a worse space. And I also felt this feeling of not wanting to let him win. And I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
it felt like that would have been a win for him, even if he would say that that's not what he wanted. In my mind, that's how that it would have felt.
If you took your own
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Wow.
And during this time of like your teenage years and growing through this, you became quite determined on what you wanted to do in life. What exactly were the things that you did that worked for you to get from there to where you were?
Definitely playing sports was a big part of my childhood and my escape. Being at practice, training, going to games. I played as many sports as possible. It gave me an opportunity to get out of the house. And I loved sports. I loved competing. It you know, probably got a little rage out as well. But yeah, sports was a huge outlet for me. I played basketball, I ran track, soccer, volleyball, anything that I could try to do to compete in and to, you know, again, get me out of the house, give me opportunity to be around other people. You know, some of my biggest social lessons came from sports, learning, you know, dealing with coaches, dealing with teammates, you know, all those things in a lot of ways work in your professional life as well. Throughout your life, some really great lessons. So sports was a huge outlet for me.
Just to go back, I want to leave it on something that people can like go away with. If they're listening to you and they're experiencing currently now something similar to what you talked about, they feel like, oh my gosh, yeah, maybe this person is controlling me, and I don't have my power, and you know, I'm feeling stuck. What's your advice to them? What should they do about it?
I mean, there are a lot of resources online. So I would definitely read or, you know, watch some videos, you know, YouTube or wherever of people talking about these cycles and how they happen.
What would they search on YouTube, do you think?
Narcissism, abuse, you know, how to recognize an abuser. There's lots of mental health podcasts and conversations from mental health professionals about what your situation is. If you have access to it, I would encourage, you know, talking to a therapist or a mental health professional about what you're dealing with. They can help really assess where you are and what's happening to you. And, you know, I know everyone doesn't have family or friends, obviously, that they can rely on in that way. But if you do, you know, reach out to family and friends and talk about what you're feeling and experiencing. It took me really for someone to give me the language to understand. When I was older as an adult in an abusive relationship, I didn't really understand how it happened and what some of the, I guess, processes that abusers use to, like I said earlier, like wear down your self-esteem and put you in this cycle that eventually just kind of strips away your identity. I went to a domestic violence event in South Florida. A friend took me to one when I was in a relationship of that nature, and listening to the other women talk about what they had experienced and the words that they used. That was the first time I heard narcissist. I was like, what? I don't know what that means, you know? And then like, it definitely helped me understand like, oh, I am in one of these situations. And it is not easy to leave those situations. When we talk about abusive relationships, no matter what kind of abusive relationship is, whether it's, you know, a family member or a, you know, child or parents or, you know, a workplace, an interpersonal relationship, you have to recognize that this is a toxic situation first. And then that doesn't mean that you're immediately going to leave. It just, because they've worked to put you in this situation. Like they've done a lot of groundwork that you are not aware of.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is really when you're kind of like the light bulb goes off. Like, oh, right. Like I did let them behave that way and stay around. And that's like the slow drip of wearing down your boundaries and wearing down your self-esteem. And boundaries also is a very huge thing. Now, I like boundary people almost too much. I'm like, absolutely, it's not acceptable. But it is really important to have boundaries. And when you grow up as a child in an abusive home, you don't know what boundaries are. You're not allowed to have boundaries. So you don't learn how to positively enforce things and just say, you know what, this is not how I want to be treated. And if you don't want to treat me this way, you can't be in my life, and not have the anxiety of them not being there anymore. Like that is an overwhelming thing to do. And it's very hard for anyone, you know, but when you are in a situation with a narcissist, they're so very good at it. They're not going to just, you know, set your car on fire day one. It's a very slow, I don't know if you should hang out with that person. It doesn't seem like they really like you. You know, I don't know. Does your sister really think, you know, that this is good for you? I don't know. Maybe she might be jealous of you. There's like these small little things.
Isn't it?
It's just a tiny little maneuver until the big one. And so it's important to pay attention to those type of things. If you're feeling that energy, then it's have those conversations with either a mental health professional, reach out for some resources, or, you know, some family or friends. Sometimes it just takes somebody close to you to be like, yeah, that's crazy. Like that's unacceptable that that's happening to you. Because, you know, we all want love and affection and attention and, companionship, and sometimes you before you know it, you're in that type of situation.
And from a very practical point of view, because it can be hard if you say speak to family and friends, like, what am I going to say? Hi, I'm being abused. You know,
No. I think just
what's the starting point for them to like give them an easy way to like, okay, I can say this to a friend or text this to someone.
yeah, just I mean, generally your family and friends will probably have an idea that this is happening to you because you've talked about it before. But, just say that I'm kind of feeling like I'm in a toxic situation. Let me tell you about some of the things that have been going on. What do you think about this? And then also, just trust your instincts. It's important to have support. That is definitely important, but you are your own best advocate. You have to protect yourself. There are bad people in the world. There are good people in the world. Most of us are a mixture of good and bad, and then there's, outliers. But if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling unsafe, if you're feeling like you're constantly being, emotionally attacked or gaslit, you have to advocate for yourself as well, because no one's going to come take you out of the situation. And you do need tools. You need to build up your power, which is why I recommend, a mental health professional and, checking into resources online as well, because, people can give you bad advice also. Like, hey, you know what? Maybe you should just stay in this because this, and that. And everyone's situation is so different. So I just think it's important to advocate for yourself. You know the life you want to live, the relationship that you want to have, and you know what you deserve. And we all deserve respect and to be safe in relationships, no matter who we are or where we come from.
Yeah.
Such great advice.
Yeah, solid advice there.
Let's talk about, you obviously you got yourself out of this situation, and you had a vision, like a goal of what you wanted to achieve in life, and you did it, and that's amazing and very inspiring for other people who are listening. Maybe they've got a vision, or maybe they don't, and they want to hear from you about what was that vision, and then looking back, do you think are the key things you did to realize that?
So I'm a very big believer in goals, especially if you are in the creative space, because there are so many different things that you can do. There are, producers, there are executives, there are hosts, there are podcast hosts, there are sports podcast hosts, there are sports opinion show hosts. There is an entire world of production that you can work in. Like, there's so many different spaces that you can have an incredible career in and be really passionate and get to do amazing things. But you have to know, in my opinion, what it is you want to do specifically in this space, because there's certain careers and paths that are sort of outlined for you, right? If you want to be a doctor, you can't just walk into a hospital and say, I'd like to be a doctor today. But if you want to be a podcast host, you just need a microphone.
Very true. Or a phone.
A phone. Right. Truly. You don't even need that. You need a phone. You need a way to upload something to YouTube.
Yeah.
So the entry points for these different spaces are so very different. If you want to be a lawyer, this is the path. You have to pass this test. Like, there's things outlined for you. And that's why, to me, those spaces are very direct for, okay, I want to be a lawyer. Like, cool. You know what your path is. But if you want to be in the creative space, or really in any space where there is just kind of broad options, but let's just stick to the creative space for this sake of this conversation. I think knowing what you want to do will really help accelerate, one, and two, prepare you for when you do arrive. I really wanted to be an opinion show host. So I started in radio, because at the time that I started in the business, podcasts were not a thing. It wasn't streaming. There wasn't IG Live. There wasn't TikTok Live. These things didn't even exist yet. Yeah. So
opinions on sports specifically? Okay.
Yes. And to me, sports talk radio was really the only space until you got to network level.
Yeah.
To be able to talk about sports, not just report, to talk about the game, to talk about the story, to do what I'm doing now. So I started in radio intentionally because that was the space that offered that opportunity, especially as a woman. And
what were you doing when you first had that vision? I want to be an opinion show host. were you doing anything at that time to do with that?
I
or-
was in college.
You were in college?
Yeah. So when I was at Barry University, one of the first days that I got there, a professor of mine brought in a representative from the student radio station. And they were looking for hosts for the radio station.
Okay.
And I was surprised they even had spaces available. I'm like, oh, like, aren't we all trying to, do this? Like, that's amazing. I can just go talk on the air. And so I went down and signed up and eventually was a manager at the radio station while I was in school there, and then started interning in radio. I did a sports talk radio internship, and then I did a entertainment morning show internship, which was really great for me because I got to see not only the crossover of entertainment and sports, but also how to produce a show that is entertaining and also informative and also has a sense of community and has a sense of fans. And so I learned a lot in the same time while I was at my university. So that's the moment where I was like, this is how I'm going to get there. And these are the things I need to learn. Because when we start in any business, I mean, obviously I thought at the time I could do what I'm doing now. I could not. I was not ready. But, we have this this powerful confidence as young people that we are, unstoppable, which we are. But you have to pair that with the repetitions and the experience and knowledge. And now I've worked in so many different spaces as a producer, as a reporter, as a sideline reporter, as a host, as a moderator, as a podcast host, as a radio host in an ensemble, as a radio host by myself. Like I've had a streaming play-by-play. Like I've done so many different things. And the more that you do, the more confidence that you have to walk into different spaces and to try new things. But I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So I always encourage young people to really sit with, what do you want to do? Because it can feel in some ways limiting to say, I want to do this.
And I think just because a lot of our audience are maybe 30, 40, 50 in their career, I think it applies to them as well.
For sure.
In terms of like, if they're feeling a bit stagnant with what they're doing, they want to launch their own business, leave a big tech company or whatever, this really still applies, right?
For sure, because you have to make a plan. And it's not that, I'm encouraging people to quit their high-paying jobs and go start, a passion project. But I think you can do both at the same time. And you also have to recognize that if you're going to do something like that, it is going to be time-consuming. It is going to expand what your bandwidth is right now for work. I have 3 different shows and multiple businesses, and people are constantly like, when do you sleep? And I'm like, I really do not sleep. Like I try to get it in. It's my favorite thing to do. But you have to be able to expand your bandwidth, because if you want something like that, whatever it is, whatever your dream is, no one is going to give it to you. And I know it's a very cliche thing to say, like no one's going to give it to you. But really, no one's going to give it to you. No one is going to walk up to you and say, I would like to offer you this tea company, and you get to design your own teas and serve teas, and you get to do that every day if that's your dream. No one's going to do that. No. You have to make it for yourself, and it's going to be very hard. It's going to take time away from what you would rather be doing, laying around or watching Netflix or. You're going to have to budget your time accordingly. But I think it applies to people who are young, who are starting out in their career, or who want to get into something different. It's just a matter of applying yourself, and then you will be amazed at the doors that open. The other part of it is you speak about it. Talk about what you want to do. Talk about what you're trying to accomplish. I would bother the hell out of people every day. Just so you know, I want to be on air. Like, this is my goal. Like, yes, I'm happy to be producing this show and I'm enjoying it. But whenever we have open slots on the weekend, I would like to come in and, get some reps. Like, constantly talk about it. And it affirms it for other people too, that they know that this is what you're working towards. So this is what you want. And when a job does open or an opportunity does come up or they know someone, this is how the whole business world is moving, is connections and people want to refer people for other things. And that snowball effect of the energy that you put into it will will open everything for you. The best piece of advice that I've ever gotten was I was going through a really, a really hard time in my life. It was after college, and I was very lost. I was coming out of an abusive relationship, and I was talking to a very successful friend of mine. He's since passed. He's an amazing person, David Levitar, and he was a very successful artist. And I was complaining to him, complaining. You know, like, nothing's working out. I'm having a hard time with my family right now. I don't have a job. I'm sleeping on my friend's couch. Blah 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 blah. And all those things were happening. It was reasonable for me to be upset.
Yeah.
But he's just listening, and he just sort of stopped and said, let me ask you a question. What do you want for yourself in the next 3 years? Could be anything. Could be a man, could be a car, could be a job. Like, just what's something you want for yourself in the next 3 years? And I said, I want to be full-time on air, radio or TV in the next 3 years. Great. How much of your energy are you putting in to making that happen right now? I was like, I mean, I don't know, 10%. Like, I don't have a job. I'm sleeping on my friend's couch. Like, I just went over all the things that are like consuming my time right now. And he was like, okay, well, why are you surprised that nothing's happening for you? 10% energy, you think that something's going to happen for you in that space? And maybe it was because I was in that state of mind, or the way that he said it, but it was just like a light bulb went off. And I've never lost that story. He really changed my life with that one conversation, because it put in perspective everything that we're talking about. How much of your energy are you putting into making this happen? Truly, be honest with yourself. We like to lie to ourselves. Sometimes we need that. But when it's time to really make something happen, you have to be honest with yourself. Do I really want this, or do I like the idea of it? Am I willing to make the sacrifices personally, professionally, of my time, with my friends, with going out? Am I willing to prioritize my dream in order to make it happen? Whatever it may be, whether it's something that you want to start at 50, whether it's you're coming right out of university, whatever it is that you want for your life, you have to make happen. And the more that you speak about it, the more energy you put into it, the more, and not just time, it's energy.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, this is going to take time, but when you're out talking to people and they ask you what you do, like, yeah, I do this, but I am working on this project, and I'm, going to transition to this, or I'm opening this store, or I'm starting this new business, or I'm starting this podcast. And then also to just be gentle with yourself about the process of it all. It's not going to happen overnight. A success is 10 years in the making. You see someone just pop up on the scene, they've been working on that for a long time.
Yeah.
They've been doing reps. They've been making mistakes. They've been being told no. It didn't just happen for them. And we see the result of success. We very rarely see the process of success. And all of those things are very important to think about when you are starting a journey to do anything, whatever it is that your goal is. Maybe it's not even a business. Maybe you just want to get in shape, or, you want to date more intentionally, or you want to fix your relationship with your family. Everything takes one step, and then all of your energy, 100% of your energy. It doesn't mean that you neglect other things in your life. It's that the energy that you have in that space is dedicated to that. So, yeah, rest in peace, David. He's, just amazing energy, but he definitely changed my life with that.
Wow. They were amazing questions. Like, change your life. That's incredible. And I think what you say, again, applies to if you're someone who wants to be the CEO of your company. We had a lady on the show who became CEO, and she told the CEO, like, I want your job.
I want to do your job.
Just to let you know, I want to be CEO one day. And he was like, okay, right. And she did it.
Of course.
How brilliant is that?
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened in that story, but I would imagine he's okay.
Yeah, exactly. They move up. They move to group level, or and
no, I mean there's a lot of jobs. Like, there's a lot of spaces, and when people come and say that they want to do what I'm doing, or they want to get into this space, do it. There's so much space for everyone, and you don't have to feel like you're in competition with somebody else, because the only person you're in competition with is yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Especially in like workplace context, organizational context. If you let your thoughts known or your intentions known, people can then factor that in, and say, okay, they want this next, so I can either let that known to that person who can help, or I know that now, so when I go here, they can move there. And it's sometimes as simple as that. But again, we're our own enemy sometimes, or we think, oh, if I say that, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. When really, no, the thing that you want is probably going to happen if you say that thing.
Yeah, it's manifesting, right? And it sounds very like, but it's just that. Like, it's just that. It's just saying, I want to do this. Can you help me? Can you mentor me? And if not, that's fine too. Someone else will. There are all these different avenues and ways and mazes that weave together the story of all of our lives and our successes and failures. And also just don't be afraid of no. Mm-hmm. No is sometimes the best thing that you will hear. It feels defeating. And I get asked about this a lot. Like, how do you deal with no's? Some no's that I've gotten have been such a blessing. I thought I wanted this thing. I thought I wanted this job. I thought I wanted this show. And I didn't get it for whatever reason. Maybe it fell apart. Maybe they didn't think I was right for it. Maybe they went in a different direction. Maybe they cut back on, who they were going to staff on it. Who cares? The amount of no's that I still get no's all the time. It never stops at any point in your career. But no can sometimes be the best thing for you. And especially if you're aligned with what your goal is, that it's just a matter of when. It's not a matter of now, it's a matter of when. And no can be the best thing that you hear. So do not let one no stop you from, like, if you let one no stop you, you don't care about that much. You're going to get no so many times. You're going to get no so many times.
Embrace it.
I cannot exaggerate enough
no's.
that no's happen at every single level. Like, I get told no all the time. Sometimes it's disappointing. Sometimes it ends up being the best thing that could happen to you. It keeps you from a disaster. It keeps you from moving to a company that then folds. It keeps you from taking a job where you now deal with a crazy boss or, frustrating coworkers. Like, you don't know why the universe is keeping you from this. Just understands that you can take your time to be disappointed, if it's something that you want, but understand that there's a reason why that's not happening. You can't get too wrapped up in rejection.
So on your podcast, Too Personal, with Taylor Rooks, you talk a lot about relationships. What is your relationship status at the moment?
I have talked about this on the show also. I do not want to be in a public relationship again.
What's a public relationship?
Yeah.
Meaning people know what my relationship status is.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe I am. Maybe I'm not.
Ooh.
But
Mystery.
it will remain a mystery in perpetuity throughout the universe. No, I won't. I don't ever say forever, but public relationships, for me at least, bring such a. We just talked about this a few episodes ago too. If you want to go and listen, it just brings this level of stress to relationships that have found at this point in life to be really unnecessary, especially with social media. There's just a lot of opinions. There's a lot of toxicity. I can handle feedback on everything that I do. I mean, I get 24/7 feedback on what I say, what I look like, how tall I am, whatever, everything. But I'm used to being in that space, and I can either, process it or not look at it or clap back. Like, I know how to manage that, but I don't want to put my significant other in that world.
Makes sense.
And then it becomes like this clock. Like, I noticed when I was in a public relationship, and by public, I mean, I don't mean just with another person that is front facing, like just announcing to the public that I'm in a relationship or who I'm in a relationship with. It starts this clock of like, okay, you post them and then you post them again, say in 2 weeks, right? That's your clock now. So if I don't post them in 2 weeks, then
what's
they're
going
like,
on?
like, are you
What's
guys
happening
okay?
here?
Like, what?
No.
Like, you guys do know people live outside of Instagram.
That's crazy.
So, and it's just little things like that I just don't have to deal with. And it is so lovely.
So what do you look for in a man?
I am someone who really likes to have good conversation. It is the number one number one thing for me. I think that looks are great, and being able to do certain things with status is great. That's all fine. But what will really make me attracted to someone and really connect with someone, and friends, I'm this way with friends as well. I want to have deep conversations. It doesn't always have to be, breaking down the patriarchy, although we do talk about that a lot. It's more about sharing your story, being transparent, being able to talk about things in a very, not surface way. I'm not great with small talk. That doesn't really get me connected to people. So I like to have conversations. So someone who is a conversationalist has a very good chance. I really like to connect with people on that level. And it doesn't always have to be trauma either. In fact, I really don't want a trauma bond. But I definitely love a man that can have a good, deep conversation, and someone who is honestly kind. I don't really, I'm a very like strong, powerful energy, but I'm really a soft girl. But I do not give that to someone who doesn't provide that space for me to be in my feminine. I can't move about the world that way. That's not how I will be successful in business. It's not how I can show up in the world. I have to protect myself and be very, strong and firm and all those things that you asked if someone watched my show, how they would describe me.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'll see on social media a lot sometimes like, oh, like how could anyone deal with her? I'm like, you think that I'm at home with my man, like I'm talking like this? That's crazy.
We are not talking about it. Muesli's better than
Yeah.
porridge. It's not happening.
We are watching Bridgerton, and that's it.
Yeah.
No, I very much want to be in my feminine with a man. So I love to be able to connect on that level, and somebody who really makes me feel safe is something that I look for.
What do you ask on a first date?
I ask what people want. So on a first date, I think, or maybe it's just me, but I'm just very direct with what I want. Like, are you looking to get married this year? Because that is not a priority for me. So if you
First date question.
Yeah, because I don't like, I'm 37, so I'm not really trying to waste anyone's time and haven't been for years. So it's not that, maybe their goals don't align or do align. But I think once you get into your 30s, especially when you're in your 20s, I think you're dating in a different way.
Yeah.
In your 30s, I think it's important to just be honest about where you are and what you want. And while we all have like these crazy dating conversations online, and they're very like, if you do this, then you're this, and it's like, okay, nobody talks like that, and nobody has these conversations like this in real life. But I do think you should say what you want, and it will save you time. It will save them time. It doesn't mean that you can't move forward if you guys don't completely align in that moment. But it is, for me, I think it's important to be not fully transparent about everything that's ever happened to you, but, what are your intentions? What are you looking for? Not in like at coffee, but if you're at, you're a date where you're having these conversations, I think it's okay to do that, because why waste anyone's time?
Yeah.
Totally.
Again, putting it out, manifest what you want.
Yeah, and it's not, again, no's. It's okay. There's billions of people in the world. You will be okay. I will be okay. It's all good.
Plenty more fish in the sea.
Yeah, and that doesn't deprioritize or make you less valuable. It just means that
It's a lot of fish.
there's another fish for you.
Yeah.
And I love that for you.
Well, thank you for sharing such amazing wisdom on a lot of topics there. It's a very inspiring story, the journey you've been on. And there's something exciting coming up next. What is it? The series?
Yes, thank you guys for having me. This was really lovely. MJ Acosta Ruiz and myself, who are friends from college, from Barry University in Miami, have a show coming out on Fuse on August 21st, premiering Like a Girl Season 2. And we are interviewing female athletes.
Great.
So we're very excited. We have a great lineup of interviews coming out for our episodic series. So, yeah.
Interviewing them about their life.
The challenges that they face as women or just athletes, breaking down their respective sports, their philosophies, on their sports, what they're looking to do next. It's really been a special project. I'm very excited about it. I'm looking forward to everyone seeing it.
Amazing. We've got a final poem.
Got a final poem.
Another
for you.
poem.
Another one.
Okay.
This
Not
one-
just
The first one made me kind of emotional. Sorry, let me get situated.
But
This one I wrote as we were going through. So
You wrote
there's-
this right now?
Yeah, so there's gleams of gems of what you said in here.
Okay.
Perspectives. Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's go. Very rarely wrong, the voice of strong opinion, and the founder of a charity that empowers others to rise above being victims. Inspired by Michael Jordan, you could say she controls the centre court. And she now shares her perspectives and thoughts and became successful in sports. Teamwork makes the dream work, a great way to learn life lessons, and our pain can be our armour, one of life's hard-earned blessings. What are your goals? A key question, especially if you're a creative. Now you've heard part 1 of her story. What's next can only be anticipated.
That's amazing.
Right.
Thanks for joining us today. It's been really great.
Thank you for having me. That's incredible that you multitasked and did that, honestly. Thank you.